Okay, good afternoon. Is the slide visible? Am I audible? Anyone please respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So last class we have discussed about, we have started risk management. Let's continue with that risk management. There I have told one framework for dealing with risks. So the planning for risks includes 4 steps we have discussed in the last class. First step is first step is risk identification, then risk analysis or prioritization, which is also otherwise known as risk assessment. Third step is risk planning, and fourth step is risk monitoring. Risk identification we have already completed in the last class, isn't it? I have told there are 2 ways for risk identification. One, using checklist. 2, using brainstorming. So these 2 things I have already discussed in the last class. So please read yourself. Various risks and their reduction techniques also we have discussed. These risks and the reduction techniques we are proposed by, I think, Boehm. So that also we have discussed earlier. Okay. Brainstorming also I have told you, and today right now we'll go to the remaining 3 steps. So the second step is what? Second step is known as risk analysis and prioritization. First you identify the risks, then you have to analyze the different risks, and you have to give a weighting scheme to prioritize which risk is very much important, which consequence is very much high. So you have to give utmost attention to that risk. So that's why you have to prioritize the risks. This step is also known as risk assessment, because unless you can assess the impacts of the risks, you cannot prioritize. This step is also known as risk assessment. Let's see about risk assessment. So a common problem with identifying the risks is that a list of risks is potentially endless. You take any project, you have to first step is identify the risks, but identifying the risks, the number of risks is infinite. It's potentially endless. There is no end to the number of risks. So this is a major problem in risk identification. That is, the list of risks is potentially endless. It is infinite. A way to somehow identify the risks is that a way is distinguishing the damaging and likely risks. So since we cannot identify, cannot treat all the risks, one way is we should distinguish which risks are very much damaging and what is their likelihood, what is their probability that they will occur. This can be done by estimating the risk exposure for each risk. So in order to do this, you have to estimate the risk exposure for each risk using the following formula. So by using which formula you can evaluate the risks, or you can assess the risk. You can find out the risk exposure. Risk exposure is equal to what is the potential damage that may be caused by the risks multiplied by the likelihood of its occurrence, or the probability of occurrence of that risk. So in that way you can compute the risk exposure. I will take also one example how to compute the risk exposure, how you can assess the risks. Usually the potential damage is assessed in terms of money. Okay, so normally the potential damage is assessed in terms of money value. Suppose a project depends on a data center, and you know data center is vulnerable to fire. Anytime fire may catch in the data center. So it might be estimated that if a fire occurred, a new computer configuration could be established for say 5 lakh pound. Okay, it is estimated that if fire occurs, a new computer configuration it could be established for pound 5 lakhs. It might also be estimated that where the computer is located, there is a 1 in 1000 chance of a fire actually happening. So the probability of fire occurrence is that 1 in 1000 chance. That means in 1000 times there is a chance that one time fire may occur. That means what is the probability? What is the likelihood of happening the fire, occurring the fire? It is 1 in 1000. That means 0.001. So now I will use the previous formula. What is the risk exposure? The damage into the probability. I have already told you damage is expressed in terms of money value, and here the value is how much? 5 lakh. into what is the probability? What is the likelihood? 0.001. So the risk exposure in this particular case would be 5 lakh pound into 0.001, which is coming to be 500 pound. Okay. So in this way, you can compute the risk assessment. Good way of understanding this value is as the minimum sum an insurance company would require as a premium. So what do you mean by this exposure? How you can understand this $500 value, in which way you will treat, in which way you will consider it? A crude way of understanding this value is as the minimum sum an insurance company would require as a premium. So if normally you are doing what insurance for your vehicle, for your company, for many things. So a crude way of understanding that this 500 value, what does it represent? A crude way of understanding this value is at the minimum sum an insurance company would require as a premium. So if you are going for what insurance company would ask you 500 pound premium for this kind of project. If 1000 companies all in the same position, same location, each contributed 500 pounds to a fund, then when the 1 in 1000 chance of the fire actually occurred, then what will happen? There will be enough money to cover the cost of the recovery. You can easily recover the items. That the amount of damage sustained will always be same. Just 1 second. The calculation of risk exposure assumes that what? The amount of damage that is sustained will always be same. So the damage which is occurring, that will always be same, which is not true. This will not happen. However, it is usually the case that there could be varying amounts of damage. The damage that will occur, that may vary from what time to time, from farm to farm, from case to case. This will not always be same. For example, as software development process, you are developing a software, suppose using any waterfall model or prototype model. So as software development process, more software is created. Obviously, today how much you have developed, after 1 month you will develop more amount of what code, and more time would be needed to recreate if it were lost. So now say, please imagine you have developed only, you have spent in 1 week for developing software. How much code you have developed, suppose that is lost, you will take only less time to again redevelop it. But if the software is lost after 1 month of your coding effort, then obviously you will require more time to recover, to recreate the whole software that you have developed in 1 month. With the some risks, there could be not only damage but also gains. So normally we treat that risk means only damage will occur, but in sometimes risks also involve the gains. For example, you are doing testing while you are developing software. The testing of a software component is scheduled to take 6 days. Suppose you have estimated that for testing the software, for performing the black box testing or white box testing, it is estimated that it will take 6 days. But it is actually done in 3 days. You have completed within 3 days. So even if there is a risk, but a team leader might therefore feel justified in producing a probability chart for this. So it was expected that it will take 6 days, but you have finished 3 days. So obviously you have got some gain. In this case, a team leader might therefore feel justified in producing a probability chart for that. So in this case, you can develop a probability chart to represent these activities. So most managers, they register very precise estimates of loss or of the probability of something occurring, such as figures are usually guesses. Okay, normally if you say these figures, actually many of the managers, they may object. So many managers register very precise estimates of loss because it cannot be accurately, it can be estimated, or of the probability of something occurring, such as figures are usually, they are normally guesses. So Barry Boehm, what he has done, he has suggested that because of this, both the risks, losses and probabilities can be assessed using relative scales in the range of 0 to 10. I have already told you the exposure, risk exposure, how we are finding risk exposure formula, the damage into probability. So the damage means the consequence, you can say. So what Barry Boehm has told, instead of using the exact figures, you can rate them, you can scale them in the range 0 to 1, both the risk loss or the damage and the probability or the likelihood. Both of them can be assessed using relative scales in between the range or in the range 0 to 10. Then the two figures, they can be multiplied together to get a notional risk exposure, to get the value of the risk exposure. Now let us take an example how this can be done. Okay. And once you get this value of risk exposure, this value can then be used to prioritize the importance of the risks. Okay, although more sophisticated risk calculations are not possible, but this calculated risk exposure value, you can use them to prioritize the importance of different risks. Let's take a small example. What I have done, I have identified different risks like changes to requirement specification during coding. You know, you have finished requirement specification. At the time of coding, again, customer is coming. You please change the requirements. Obviously, this is a risk because this will affect your software development. Specification takes longer than expected. You have expected it will take 10 days, but it is taking 15 days. So what is the consequence? Significant staff sickness affecting critical path activities. So some staffs fall sick during the development. How it will affect? Significant staff sickness affecting non-critical activities. Module coding takes longer than expected. You have estimated coding will take 15 days, but it's taking 1 month. Module testing demonstrates errors or deficiency design. During testing, you identify that some errors have occurred. These are all possible potential risks. I have given one identification number to the risks, R1 to R6, and the likelihoods are given that the changes to requirements specification during coding, it is most probably because many customers, they will come even after coding is over, they want to change the requirements. So based on your previous experience, you have estimated that the probability is 8 in a scale of 0 to 10. How it will impact? Definitely it will impact your coding and testing. So suppose the impact is 8, the consequence is 8. Then how I will find out the risk exposure? Likelihood multiplied by impact. So 8 into 8 is 64. Like that, you just multiply all those values of likelihood and impact. You will get risk exposure. Once finding the risk exposure, what you can do? You have to prioritize. Which risk is now very much important? You can see risk exposure for the first risk is 64. This is the most important. That means it should be given priority 1. So changes to requirement specification during coding will be given priority 1. Next, what will the next priority? You can say 35. That means significant staff sickness affecting the critical path activity is very much important, because if one critical activity gets delayed, the whole project will be delayed. So next value is 2. Next is R6, module testing demonstrates errors or deficiency design. This will be the next priority. Like that, these risk exposure values can be used to assign priorities to the risks. So there is another approach, let's say, for assessment of risk exposure or for risk exposure assessment. Even using the indicative numbers in the range 0 to 10 rather than precise money values and probabilities, it is not completely satisfactory. For many projects, it may not be satisfactory. The values are likely to be subjective, and different analysts might pick different numbers. Okay, so the values are likely they are subjective, and the different analysts might pick up different numbers. So another approach, let's say, this approach is to use some qualitative descriptions of the possible impact as well as the likelihood or the probability of each risk. Then consistency between assessors is facilitated by associating each qualitative description with a range of values. So with each qualitative description, you can assign some range of values. Then you can then you may get some consistency between the assessors. So now let's see how here we can give this. Then let's see how we can use these qualitative descriptions. This is one more approach where we are using qualitative description, not exactly 0 to 10 value, not exactly monetary values like 500 pounds or 5,000 pounds. So we are giving some qualitative, as I have already told you in my previous slide. In this alternative approach, some qualitative descriptions are used. For what? For both the impact and the likelihood or probability. Impact is also known as that damage. Likelihood is also, you may call it that probability. See, now I am ranking. If the range, this is for which one? For risk probability. If the probability of occurring the risk is greater than 50%, then I will rate it as a very high probability level. If the probability of happening, chances of happening is in between 30 to 50%, it is significant. If the probability of risk, chance of happening of it is 10 to 29%, we say it is moderate. If the probability of happening of this risk is less than 10%, we say that is a very low. The probability is the risk probability is very low. Similarly, you can also assign the range for this this is probability, other one is the damage or consequence, so or impact. So the different ranges you can assign for the impacts, like if the impact is greater than 30% or above the budgeted expenditure, then you say it's a very high. If in between the impact is that the monetary value is above the budgeted expenditure is 20 to 29%, then we say significant. If it is lies between 10 to 19%, we say the impact is moderate. If this value is less than 10% of the budgeted expenditure in terms of money, then we say that the impact is low. So here we are not using the scale 0 to 1, but we are using some range, and accordingly we assign some level like high, significant, moderate or low for this probability and the impact. Impact of what? Impact on cost of this impact of risk on the cost. So in the latter table, the potential amount of damage has been categorized in terms of its impact on project cost. This I have already told you. So in this table, what has happened? The potential amount of damage has been categorized in terms of its impacts on the project cost. Similarly, you can draw other tables. Other tables could be drawn to show the impact of risks on project duration, because here we have taken what? Impact on what? Impact on cost. Similarly, you can draw tables for impact on duration and other things. Like you can draw other tables to show the impact of risks on project duration or on the quality of the project delivered, etc. Okay. To some extent, the project manager can choose whether the damage inflicted by a risk affects the cost, duration, or quality of the deliverables in conjunction with the project sponsor. The project manager may discuss with the project sponsor, and they can choose whether the damage inflicted by the risk it affects whether the cost or duration or the quality of the deliverables. This can be discussed in conjunction with the project sponsor. Okay. Then you will see a special type of matrix called as probability impact matrix. So where the potential damage and the likelihood or the probability of a risk, they are defined by a qualitative descriptors. What will happen? You cannot easily find out the risk exposure by using that formula. We have seen that we have seen the risk exposure formula is damage into probability. But when damage and probability they are accurate numbers, you can use this formula. But when they are not accurate formulas, they are defined by qualitative descriptors, then the formula that you have seen, you cannot use. The risk exposure cannot be calculated by multiplying the two factors together. In this case, how can you find out the risk exposure? In this case, the risk exposure is indicated by the position of the risks in a matrix. So we have to find out the risks. We have to indicate the risks by showing its position in a matrix. So these types of matrices are commonly called as, they are popularly called as probability impact grids or probability impact matrix or summary project matrix. Now let's see an example of this probability impact matrix. This is an example of probability impact matrix. See, these are all qualitative. In x-axis, y-axis we have taken like qualitative values are low, moderate, significant, high. Here we have taken probability in x-axis, y-axis we have taken like impact. Again, the qualitative values are low, moderate, significant, high, etc. And you see, you want that which risks are very high, you will give high priority. Then obviously I will take which one? The high values for the probability, high values for what? High values for this impact, and this one becomes this border. This bold line becomes the borderline, and now you will see that. So this requires. Suppose there is a small project you are developing. Not small. You can take our previous example. I think how many things you have taken? 6 risks you have taken, R1 to R6. Suppose R1 falls here because this is change in requirement very high. Then this is R6 like this, R2, R3, R5, R4. We have put at their appropriate positions. This is the tolerance line What is coming above the tolerance line, you have to rate them. They are the most important risks. You have to give top priority to this risk. So for our example project, requirement 1 and requirement 6, sorry, risk 1 and risk 6, they are very much important. They should be given top priority. So in this figure, some of the cells in the top right of the matrix have been zoned up by putting a bold line. We call it as a tolerance line. So the risks that will appear within this zone have a degree of seriousness that calls for particular attention. So these risks R1, R6, they are above the tolerance line. So they require special attention. You have to handle them. You have to treat them very much urgently. Okay, this is regarding the probability impact matrix. So we know that there is a need for frequent reassessment of effort and duration estimates during a project, isn't it? While we have discussed effort estimation and duration estimation, we have told you that don't only compute only once. As the project progresses, you have to recalculate again and again, because as the project progresses, there might be a change in the estimates for the efforts and duration. This thing also apply to risk exposure, because today right now what is the risk? As the project progresses, tomorrow it may not be a large risk because you already have known how to solve it. So time to time, you have to reassess the risk exposure as the project progresses. Okay. A risk might be what that key users are unavailable when needed to supply details of their requirements. But as requirements are gathered, so this risk will diminish until it is no longer significant. After some time, today you are finding that no faculty or no coders are there, so it is a high risk. But suppose tomorrow you have taken some the temporary coders, or you have conducted interviews, new coders have joined, then this risk will be diminished. This risk will be minimized. So you have to compute, you have to calculate the risk exposure, you have to assess the risk periodically, regularly, or from time to time during the development of the project. In general, the element of uncertainty will lessen as a project progresses, and more is learned by the developers about user requirements and any new technology. As the project will progress, the uncertainty, the risks will normally be reduced. The developers, the project manager, they can learn more about the user requirements. They can learn more about the new technology. So gradually, then the risks will be reduced. This should be reflected in lower risk probabilities. So the probabilities of getting these risks later on during the development of the project may be gradually reduced. Okay. On the other hand, the potential damage you will tend to increase as the amount invested in the project grows. So as the project, see, probability will gradually it will less. But what is about the cost or damage? As the project grows, the potential damage may tend to increase. As I have already told you, you have developed a software for 7 days. But if that is something lost, some problem, you can recreate with the minimal effort. But if that software you have developed it 1 month and some problem occurs, you have to recreate from the beginning. You have to put more effort, and hence you have to put more amount. So that's what I am saying. Getting the chances will be less as the project progresses, but the damage, the consequence will be more as the project grows. On the other hand, the potential damage will tend to increase as the amount invested in the project grows. If you type a substantial report, I have already told you, if you type, for example, if you type a substantial report or a Word document using a word processor and neglect to take backups, then what will happen? As each day adds more text to the report, day by day you are typing some more things, more lines, more pages. What will happen? It also adds to the number of days needed to rekey the report in the event of file loss. If the file is lost within 1 week, how much will be the cost? What will be the risks? How much damage will be there? How much amount of effort you have to retype? It will be certainly less if the file will be lost after 1 month. So the amount or the damage will tend to increase as the project grows. So we have seen the second page, that is over risk assessment. Third page is risk planning. So let's see how you can plan for the risks. Having identified First step we have already told, we have identified the risks. Second phase is what? We have to assess the risks, which risks are very highly important, which should be given more priority, that we are calling risk assessment, and then we are coming third phase, risk planning. Having identified the major risks and allocated the priorities, then the next task is to decide how to deal with them, how to handle the risks. There are many different techniques are there. The important techniques are risk acceptance, risk avoidance, risk reduction and mitigation, and risk transfer. So let's see first risk acceptance. Risk acceptance means what? This is the do nothing option. We cannot do anything else. We have to accept. This is the do nothing option. Nothing can be done. This is the do nothing option. We will already in the risk prioritization process have decided to ignore some risks in order to concentrate on the more likely or damaging. Say some of the risks, the probability is very less, just within say 1 or 2 or just 10% or below 10%. So for the consequences are below 10%, we have to live with them. We cannot do anything else. Okay, let's leave those things which are only very much okay. Their impact is high, they are very high priority, only will deal with them. So this thing we call as risk acceptance. We have to accept the risks. This is the do nothing option. We'll already in the risk prioritization process have decided to ignore some risks, maybe less than 10%, whatever probability or 10% of the consequence or damage, in order to concentrate on what? On the more likely or damaging risks. We could decide that the damage inflicted by some risks would be very less than the cost of action that might reduce the probability of a risk happening. There are some risks, you know, their chances are very less, their consequences is very less. If you will try to handle them, you have to spend more time, more money in handling. So it's better to accept those risks and proceed further. Thus it is called as risk acceptance, as their probability is very less, as they are and their consequence is also very less. Second technique, risk avoidance. So some of the activities may be so prone to accident that it is the best to avoid them altogether. Okay, some activities there, they will be so prone to accident that it is very best. It is best to avoid them altogether. You please try to avoid all those risks. If you are worried about, say, like example, it is given here. If you are worried about the sharks in the sea, then don't go into the water. Simplest solution. This is how you can avoid this type of risks. For example, given all the problems with the developing software solutions from scratch, managers might decide to retain existing clerical methods or to buy an off-the-shelf solution. Isn't it? Here we are trying to avoid. You know, if you develop a software from the scratch, many problems will come, many risks will come. Why should I go into the problem? Either I can go manually by keeping my clerks, or in the market so many ready-made softwares are available. I can go and buy the off-the-shelf solutions. That is better. In that way, I can avoid the risks of developing a software from the scratch. Okay, these are some of the examples. Third method is risk reduction. Here we have to do something to reduce the effect of the risks. Here we decide to go ahead with a course of action despite the risks, but take precautions that reduce the probability of the risks. So here we will go ahead with a proper course of action despite the risks are there, but we take some precautions which will reduce the probability of happening the risks. For example, suppose there are two staffs. Okay, suppose two of the staff scheduled to work on a project, they departed for other jobs. In between the software development, they have left the jobs. If this has been identified as risks, steps might have been taken to reduce possible departures of staffs. So then if this is the thing, if we can identify that in between some staffs may leave, so we can take some action so that they will not be motivated to reduce to leave the job. For example, for instance, the developers might have been promised generous bonus to be paid on successful completion of the project, etc. If you will just give some bonus, give some promotion, then they will not be interested to leave the job. Like you see in several companies, you will see if there are several private colleges, you will see they want to attract both the husband and wife, because if the husband and wife both are there in one college, probably they will not leave. So if the husband has joined first, second they try to also give an offer to the the wife if she is qualified, then probably they will not leave the job. So these are the things we are trying to reduce the effects of the risks. In this case, if the staffs are leaving, we have to motivate them by giving bonus, by giving promotions, by bringing spouse together into the same organization so that they will not leave the job. So in that way, we can reduce the effect of the risks. Okay, so these are some other examples. Please read yourself. So here I am saying that an alternative scenario that the project manager see. Okay, let's see quickly. So another example is like this. Suppose after the purchase of a payroll package, there is a requirement for the payroll database, which has to be accessed by another application. Last class I had given this example. So the requirement is that you have already purchased a payroll package. Now the requirement is that the payroll database has to be accessed by another application, and unfortunately the application that you have purchased, it did not allow such access. Then what should do? This is a risk. So an alternative scenario is that the project manager identified this as a possible risk much early on the development or in the project. Then he or she might have come across the Richard Fairley 4-core software acquisition risks. So we'll see Richard Fairley, he has given some risks, 4-core software acquisition risks, where one risk is difficulty in integrating the data formats and communication protocols of different applications. Let's see what are these 4 cores. So these are Fairley's 4 commercial of the software acquisition risks. If you are acquiring a software from outside, off-the-shelf components are available in the market, ready-made solutions. If you are acquiring them, some problems might be there. There will be problem related to integration. There will be problem related to upgradation. No source code will be available because the off-the-shelf source code lies with the developer. Supplier failures or buyouts. So if these are the these are the problems. These are the descriptions like integration. If there is a problem related to integration, what does it mean? Difficulties in integrating the data formats and the communication protocols of different applications. So you have to know that if you have purchased from outside the ready-made software, so this risk is there. Accordingly, you have to make necessary arrangement. Okay. So now this you see this problem that you are not able to access this payroll database by another application. This problem belongs to this first risk. So if the project manager might have come across this Richard Fairley 4-core software acquisition, then he could have taken the remedial action. She might have or he might have specified that the selected package must use a widely accepted data management system like Oracle that allows easier integration. So if this is the case, then what should happen? Then he should specify or she should specify that the selected package must use a widely accepted data management system like Oracle or Sybase that allows easier integration. So in this way, this risk or this problem, this risk or this problem could have been avoided. It could have been reduced. Last step is the last type is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation can sometimes be distinguished from risk reduction. There is a difference between risk mitigation and risk reduction. Let's see. Please try to understand the difference, or please try to see the difference between risk mitigation and risk reduction. Risk reduction techniques, they attempt to reduce the likelihood of the risks occurring. So the risk reduction techniques, they will try to reduce the probability or the likelihood of the risks occurring. But risk mitigation these techniques are the actions which are taken to ensure that the impact of the risk is lessened, is reduced when it occurs. Please try to understand. Risk reduction means it will try to reduce the likelihood or probability of the risks occurring. But risk mitigation means these are the actions which will be taken to ensure that to allow that the impact of the risks is lessened or is reduced when they occur. For example, if you take regular backups of data storage, then what will happen? This would reduce the impact of the data corruption, but not its likelihood, isn't it? Or if you are regularly taking backups in your pen drive, obviously this would reduce the impact of the data corruption, but not its probability or not its likelihood. Mitigation is very much, or it is closely associated with the contingency plans. Okay, this is about risk mitigation. And similarly, the risk transfer. So in this case, the risk is transferred to another person or another organization or to another party, maybe a third party. With the software projects, an example of this would be where a software development task is outsourced to an outside agency for a fixed fee. See, one example I give. When you are purchasing vehicles, you are making a what insurance, and there there are different types of insurance: first party, second party, etc. That means if some accident occurs, the damage that will be what it will be met by this, or the cost that you have faced, that will be met by whom? By the third insurance party. So similarly in software development projects, what do you mean by risk transfer? With software development projects, an example of this would be what? Where a software development task is outsourced to an outside agency for a fixed fee. Directly you give to TCS or Infosys for development, they will develop. So any risks they will take care of. You are directly giving the software development task to a third consultancy party like TCS or Infosys, etc. You might expect the supplier to quote a higher figure to cover the risks that the project takes longer than the average expected time. So any kind of risks, the third party or the developer you are giving to a outside agency, they will include all the cost there. So you have to expect that now the cost that the firm will quote may be a little bit higher in order to cover all those types of risks and all those types of problems. On the other hand, a well-established external organization might have productivity advantages as its developers are experienced in the type of development to be carried out. But if you are a well-established external organization, they might have the productivity advantages because its developers are very much experienced in the type of the development that has to be carried out. The need to compete with the other software development specialists would also tend to drive prices down. If they are a competitive, so that's why the tendering is done. If there is a competition, obviously the prices may go down. The need to compete with other software development specialists would also tend to drive prices down. Then we'll quickly look at the risk management. So isn't it? So let's see quickly after risk planning, what we have to do: risk monitoring or the risk management. We have to make a contingency plan. Risk reduction activities, they would appear to have only a small impact on reducing the probability of some risks. For example, staff absence through illness. Isn't it? I have already told you that risk reduction activity will do what? They will reduce the probability of occurring the risks. Just like for my example, staff absence through illness. But while some employers encourage their employees to adopt a healthy lifestyle, some employers say, okay, you follow this healthy lifestyle, do this yoga, pranayama, etc., or take some protein, etc., make a healthy lifestyle. It remains likely that some project team members will at some point be brought down by minor illness such as flu. That will obviously happen. So minor illness will occur. So these kinds of risks need a contingency plan. So to handle these kind of things, you have to put a contingency plan. You might keep some person's employee extra with you, or you might do some overtime for doing those works which has to be done by this ill person. So you have to make a contingency plan. This is a planned action to be carried out if the particular risk materializes. So for different small risks, you have to make some plan. This is a planned action to be carried out if the particular risk materializes. If a team member involved in urgent work we are ill, then what the project manager should do? Then the project manager might draft in another member of staff to cover that group from another group, or from the pool, or from the repository, or from the the people. There might be some stock, or say there might be some reserve people. So the manager might bring some reserve people or people from the reserved place to assign that work. So this is a planned action which has to be carried out if the particular risk materializes. If a team member involved in some urgent work we are ill, then the project manager he might draft in another member of staff, maybe from the reserve place, to cover that particular work. The preventive measures that were discussed under the risk reduction heading that will usually incur some cost, of course, regardless of the risk, whether it materializes or not. The cost of a contingency measure will only be incurred if the risk actually materializes. Okay, the cost that will be happening, the cost of a contingency measure, it will be only incurred. Please see, it will be only incurred if the risk actually materializes. However, there may be some things that have to be done in order for the contingency action to be feasible. So there may be some things that have to be performed, that have to be done in order to the contingency action to be feasible. Let's see an example for this. An obvious example is that the backups of a database have to be taken if the contingency action when the database is corrupted is to restore it from backups, isn't it? So it's saying what? That the backups of a database, it has to be taken regularly if the contingency action when the database is corrupted is to restore it from backups. So this example said that backups of a database, it has to be taken if the contingency action when the database is corrupted is to restore it from the backups. There would be a cost associated with taking the backups. Of course, if you will take the backup for your database, obviously some cost you have to incur. So now deciding on the risk actions. So suppose there are different actions for a particular risk, different actions. How to find out which action will be best suitable? So deciding on the risk actions, 5 generic responses to a risk have been discussed above, isn't it? We have seen 5 actions like risk, 5 responses we have seen: risk acceptance, risk reduction, risk mitigation, and so on. 5 responses we have seen. 5 generic responses to a risk have been discussed above. For each actual risk, however, specific actions have to be planned. Not all those 5 out of 5, 1 or 2 actions you may take. In many cases, the experts have produced list recommending practical steps to cope with the likelihood of the particular risks. You can use this Boehm's top 10 software engineering risks. Any book you can find them. Whatever the countermeasures that are considered, they must be cost effective. So whatever, see, this is the amount of the damage that will get from a risk. This is the consequence. And if some action you are taking countermeasure, it must be cost effective. You should spend less amount of money in that countermeasure. That's what I am saying here. Whatever the countermeasures that are considered, they must be cost effective. On those occasions where a risk exposure value can be calculated as a financial value using this formula that I have already told you, value of damage into probability occurrence formula, the cost effectiveness of a risk reduction action can be assessed by using the following formula. Let's see what I have told. If there are say 2 techniques, you want to find out which technique is better. So you have to find out the cost effectiveness of a risk reduction technique. Here I have already told you that the countermeasures that are considered, they must be cost effective. How to measure this cost effectiveness of a risk reduction technique? The cost effectiveness of a risk reduction technique can be assessed, can be evaluated by calculating a factor called as RRL, risk reduction leverage, by using the following formula. What is the formula? RRL is equal to the risk exposure before minus the risk exposure after divided by cost of risk reduction. Okay, the risk exposure before the risk has occurred minus the risk exposure after the so this is risk reduction leverage RRL is equal to risk exposure before you have applied the risk reduction techniques minus risk exposure after you have applied the risk reduction techniques divided by cost of risk reduction. Okay, this I have explained here. RE before means it is the risk exposure before risk reduction actions have been taken. RE after means the risk exposure after taking the risk reduction action. or the risk reduction technique after using the risk reduction technique. And if the value that you are getting, where you will get definitely some value, then how you will take the inference, how you will take the, or how you will get the conclusion. The inference is as follows. An RRL value above 1.00 indicates that the reduction in risk exposure achieved by a measure, by a countermeasure, is greater than its cost. Okay, so if the RRL value is greater than 1.00, then whatever risk exposure you have achieved by a measure, it is greater than its cost. This measure is greater than the cost of the risk. We'll take one example. Suppose it might cost 2 lakh pound to replace a hardware configuration used to develop a software application. Okay, it will cost 2 lakh pound to replace a hardware. There is a 1% chance of a fire. Okay, because of the particular location of this location, there is a 1% chance of fire. Then what will the risk exposure? The risk exposure would be 1% of this. I have already told you straightforward formula. This damage into probability. So the replacement cost is 2 lakh, probability is 1%. So 1% of 2 lakh is 2,000 pound. Now let's see the measure. What reduction technique you can use? So since there is a risk of getting fire, you can use fire alarms. And if you use fire alarms, you have to spend some money. So installing fire alarms may be of the cost how much? 500 pound. Okay, if you install the fire alarms, the cost will be spent 500 pound. Installing fire alarms at a cost of 500 pounds would reduce what? The chance of fire. So if you install some fire alarm, then getting the chance of fire will be reduced from 1% to 0.5%. Now I have to, so this is the risk of this 2000 is the risk exposure before this risk reduction technique have been used. And what is the risk reduction technique here? Installing fire alarms. So now I have to compute the risk exposure after installing this, installing fire alarm, that is after using this risk reduction technique. So what will be how much? So it will be very much simple. So now it is reduced to how much? 0.5%. So 2 lakh into 0.5% coming to how much? 1 lakh. So now I have to find out the risk reduction leverage. RRL is equal to how much? RE before, what is RE before the reduction technique? 2000 minus RE after, risk exposure after the reduction technique is used, risk reduction technique is used, that is 1000. So 2000 minus 1000 divided by the cost. The formula is what? RE before minus RE after divided by cost of risk reduction. What is the risk reduction technique here? Installing fire alarms. What is the cost you will spend? 500 pound. So divided by pound now 500. It is costing how much? 2.0. So how I can take the inference? I have already told you. If it is greater than 1.0, it means that the reduction in risk exposure achieved by a measure is greater than its cost. So here it is greater than 2. So then the action would be deemed worthwhile because this, what if it is greater than 1, it indicates that the reduction that you are getting, it's greater than the cost. This reduction is effective. You are getting much more reduction. You should go for that. So since it is 2.0, the action would be deemed worthwhile because you will get much more benefit. In this way, you can get the inference. If it is less than 1, then you should not go for that risk reduction technique. This is how you can find out the effectiveness, the cost effectiveness of this risk reduction techniques. Okay, this I have already explained to you. Okay, so whatever you do, you have to maintain a register, create and maintain the risk register. This is very much important. So you just maintain a register. Very simple. I should not read. You read yourself. This is an example of risk register. Like the format is, you have to write. This is the name of the record, risk record. Every risk is an ID. The title of the risk, who is the owner, when the date raised. Okay, the date raised, status, description of the risk, impact. What is the impact or the consequence? Impact description, where you should write the consequence of the risk. Then what risk mitigation strategy you have used, recommended risk mitigation strategy. Then what is the probability and the impact values? You have to write what is the probability values and what are the impact values. Impact may be in terms of cost, duration, quality, etc. Okay. Then the incident action history you have to write, the date wise, when the when this risk has incident, what action you have taken, who are the actor, what is the outcome, or what is the outcome of this risk, what technique you have used, any comment, any remark you can write here. In this way, you should be able to maintain the risk register for all the risks those may happen or those which have happened during the development of the project.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
in risk register,
Yes.
what is the probability means pre-mitigation and post-mitigation?
Oh, it is a pre-mitigation means before you have applied this mitigation strategy, and post-mitigation means after you have applied the mitigation or the reduction technique. Just I have told you now this example. Before this, like you are finding out the risk exposure. After if you will use the risk reduction technique or the install fire alarms, then this what is the value? This is reduced. So similarly, you have to find out here the probability is 1% before, and after it is coming to 0.5%. Before this, the cost is 2000, after it is 1000. Like those things, you have to find out the pre and post mitigation effects. Okay. Okay. So the risks we have seen mitigation, similarly risk monitoring and management plan. It is usually advisable for the project manager to develop a risk mitigation, monitoring and management plan. For everything you do, see test, you have to make a test plan. Project management, you have to prepare a project management plan. Similarly, configuration, you have to make a configuration management plan. Similarly, for handling risks, you have to prepare a plan called as risk mitigation, monitoring and management plan. An important component of this document is a risk table. Each row of the table, it will contain the name of the risk, what is its probability, and what is its impact on the project. For each risk in the risk table, the specific conditions or the events that need to be monitored to check whether the risk has actually occurred, it has to be mentioned, it is mentioned. What is the consequence, that has to be mentioned. The possible ways in which the risks can be avoided, how they can be mitigated, those ways should be listed. Okay, the possible ways in which the risk can be avoided is also documented. A contingency plan to contain the effect of the risks is also documented. You have to contain the risks. So a contingency plan to contain the effect of the risks also it has to be documented. Okay. So today, in the last class, we have discussed risk identification. Today, we have discussed risk analysis and prioritization. Here, you have seen how to assess the risk exposure we have discussed here. In risk planning, we have seen like risk acceptance, risk avoidance, risk mitigation, and so on. So then we have also discussed risk monitoring, how you can monitor the risks. Here we have to maintain a document, a document called as RRM plan. What is the name of the document? We have to prepare a document called as risk mitigation, monitoring and management plan for a project. That document we have to maintain. So these things we have discussed today. Okay, we have taken on these things from these two books. Thank you very much. Now let's take up any questions, please. Any questions, please? So small problems might be asked. Otherwise, what subjective type, long type questions will be asked from this chapter.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, this PERT chart is not possible in means project library.
Sorry, PERT chart is not possible in?
Means not able to draw PERT chart in
okay, then you go
project
for
library.
Gantt chart. Then you go for the other tool I have told, Gantt project.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, please go for Gantt project. Any tool you can use, not specific to only these two. I have
Yes,
for
sir.
the
Any
example I have
online
told.
tool.
Yes. You go for. I have just written. I have given only two examples. You can choose your own tool, no problem. Okay. So today, or maybe I am just putting the assignments after sometimes on POT. I have not given so far POT assignments. The problematic assignments I will give. So I think CPM last date was over. Now I will give assignments on POT. Okay. So I'll take the attendance from the system. Maybe we'll stop here. Thank you very much.